Welcome to Masters of Self University podcast, your highest source of sacred truths and universal wisdom. Hello, beautiful souls. I'm Rachel Fiori, mystic, spiritual teacher, psychic healer, and founder of Masters of Self University. Join our journey of soul transformation as we deep dive into this latest episode.
Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Masters of Self University podcast. I'm your host, Ellie Lee.
And I'm your host, Danny Morley.
And today we are joined by mystical life coach, Roger Schultz, everybody.
Hey,
What's happening, everybody? What's going on, Danny? How are you, Ellie?
Roger, we haven't seen you in a minute, even though
Nope.
we see you all the time in our other groups because we're a soul family, so we're constantly meeting up with each other all week. But we haven't seen you on the podcast. How are you, dude?
I'm doing pretty good. I mean, definitely, moving through a lot of different things, but overall, doing pretty good. Doing pretty good. A couple of things we can dive into a little bit later on the topic, but yeah, I mean, as you guys were a part of, had a really incredible, healing opportunity with this group, and that was badass. And so, yeah, I mean, it ebbs and flows. It's not linear. It's not mathematical. It's parabolic. And so, yeah, I'm in a good spot.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, definitely. I can relate to the ebbs and the highs and the lows, and it just feels like you're constantly. It's like if you were on a roller coaster inside a washing machine.
Oh yeah. On like tumble,
right?
And like the hottest setting.
Yeah.
Where it's burning you constantly.
You're just like, ah!
But at the same time, it's making you squeaky clean.
Yeah,
exactly. Sometimes you might throw a little OxyClean in there to kind of, add a little like cleaning agent in there. But yeah, to Danny's point, you come out fresh and clean, and then there's that span in between, like where you take the load out of the laundry, it's clean and it gets used and worn and displayed, and then you got to kind of go back in the laundry and do it all over again.
Yep, exactly. Yep.
And what laundry have you been doing recently? Let's get into some.
Man. Yeah, the big topic that's been really kind of popping up is I kind of classify it as go along to get along. And where that really kind of like the epicenter around that was an event I was part of probably about 3-4 months ago or so with a group of people. And, my expansion was, sometimes they'll say like an intention. This was an expansion for me. Like I really wanted to just expand, step into my power. Like, what did that look like? What was my purpose? I'd done a ton of work up to that point. And like during this event, a lot of things, like a lot of projections were thrown my way. And it was really interesting. And part of this event was with a licensed therapist. So keep that in mind. And so this licensed therapist was throwing some projections. I mean, I was receiving it. I was open to it. But they just didn't sink in my body. And I knew as things started to kind of unfold, I was not in alignment with anything that was going on in this particular, event, so to speak. And however, I really was enjoying the tuning in, like the communication I had with my body, right? Like the knowing feel that my body could tap into a divine aspect of me and communicate to me through that body awareness, which I'd never really felt before, right? I kind of had been to a point in the energetic world or learning mechanism was I would often second guess myself in and around like my abilities or being able to tap into that intuitive space, that energetic space, because I'd been so jumbled up into like actually feeling. This was like a really, really cool awareness in this particular piece. And so I really wanted to experience it, whether or not, this event was in alignment with who I am today. So like, regardless of that, like the recognition of, okay, I am not in tune. I don't agree with what's going on. I wanted to still kind of learn, and like through this whole process, was very, very painful. After the event, I became kind of the target, right? Because the whole time I knew I should have said, "Hey, time out. This isn't working," and created that boundary in that space. But I'm very curious, and I like to have um, practical, real world applications of the things that we're taught at MSU. I felt this was a really good opportunity to do it. And yeah, I had like after that event, I mean, I'm like feeling it in my body right now, like the heat, the triggers, like all this stuff is like still there, even though it was like 3 or 4 months ago. But afterwards, I had to write like Rachel Baker, another one of our mystical coaches, took me through an incredible healing session where I got back to my 6-year-old self when we were living in California. And my mom, so my father had died, he'd passed away. And so she was dating a man who had an older son who was probably about 15 or 16. And through this process, I learned, like, it unpacked the molestations of this gentleman's son on my older brother Richard and myself. And so through this process, what I learned was, what was told to me by this gentleman was, if you tell anybody, it will be your fault that your mom doesn't marry my dad and you won't have a dad. It'll
Wow.
be all your fault. So I went along. I went along to get along. I didn't want to disrupt. I didn't want to ruin this opportunity for my mom. I didn't want to ruin this opportunity for a family, right? Family, because, my father passed away at a really, really young age. And regardless of the distortions, like regardless of the molestations, regardless of the stuff, all I desired was just a family. And so I went along to get along. And so that was incredibly powerful to have that experience dovetail off of this event. And so, it took some time to like really maneuver through this process, but I was the target of this therapist's ire because I energetically rejected this person. And so from that, it was very tumultuous. It was very challenging to stay in my power, to stay connected, and just to basically detach from the situation. But I really learned the power of boundaries and when to identify and feel into your body when it doesn't feel in alignment, and to how to express that in a way that is the sacred no. Like we learn in our course, no is a complete sentence, right? No, period. I don't need any other reasons. I don't need to explain. I don't need to justify. No, this is not in alignment with me. Go do what you guys need to do. No expectations, no outcomes, whatever. And trust my body in that experience, trust my intuition. And that's going back to second guessing and self-deception and things like that, that really like brought me into like victim conscious. Like, what did I do wrong? What this and that? And, it's my fault that this happened and all that stuff. So it's just a really, really interesting experience. And then that just kind of propelled an incredible expansion into me and like into the like fucking amazing people in this organization. There's amazing people in MSU. So that's kind of how this whole thing kind of got started and started percolating.
Wow. Thank you for sharing all that.
Yeah.
It's huge.
So,
yeah, and
it was rough. Like, it was really fucking rough for 30 to 45 days.
And it sounds like there was a lot of, when you were young, this like emotional manipulation.
Mm-hmm.
And let's go into that, if you're willing, and just talk about like what you've done to work through that and like the programs that you've seen. And
yeah, I mean, emotional manipulation can be very in your face, and it can be very subtle.
right.
Yeah.
Right. It's
Yeah.
very sneaky, very narcissistic. And just narcissism works on both from a gender perspective, biological, like male, female. Like it's not, just akin to men, right? It can happen in both sides. So I want to be very, very specific there. But emotional manipulation can be, oh man, like, hey, if you go do this, then I'll go do this.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It can be, masked and kind of sprinkled with guilt. It can be masked and sprinkled with shame. It can be really interesting things like, let's say you're out on a date with other people, and you start doing these really manipulative type things in around your partner and around other people. But I mean, that's where I really learned it from, was that piece. And I learned it from my mom. I learned it from my brothers. I learned like, oh, I can get attention if I can draw people into my victim story, or if I can draw people into how I can manipulate them. Right. I would emotionally manipulate people like, oh, hey, my dad died when I was 18 months. Oh man, that had to be, like, it was, but then once I had them hooked, I could then control them. I could then puppeteer and get whatever I could, however much I could extract from that relationship through that story. And then, start learning how to throw in other fabrications or other lies or other little white lies, so to speak, to continue the story, to continue fueling that tank, and to continue to extract or mine what I could from that particular relationship. And whether or not the person or persons began to like unpack that or unwind it, or just like, fuck you, then I would just move on to the next host. So I was just like an emotional parasite.
Yeah.
Right.
And do you feel like that that started with this? I'm assuming the story was your stepbrother, who was basically telling you like, hey, you best go along to get along right now, or you're not going to have a family.
I mean, I think it really started around age 4 or 5.
Wow.
Especially, it really started to kind of blossom in kindergarten, where I was very intellectually intelligent, right? I was reading at a much higher level, so I could utilize that with students, right? I could utilize that with, oh, hey, I'm better than you. And then it became, oh, well, he's smart, we want to be around him. And then I could start manipulating, controlling, and extracting toys, and it, like, where it really got interesting, where I would be invited over to a person's house to play, and I could see the relationship that person had with their parents, right? And I wanted that relationship. So I began to devalue their own kid, to place myself on a pedestal, to say, hey, you should always invite Roger over. Roger doesn't have a dad. Roger doesn't have this stuff, right? Why don't you give him your Nintendo? Why don't you loan him your things, right? So that's where it really got kind of, the more and more I work into this, it got really gross in how I would position myself and jockey myself into position for attention with my friends' parents.
Yeah. It's really interesting because, I see a lot of stuff out there on the internet of how narcissists are really they're crucified, right? And they're always the bad guy, and they're always like manipulative and even all this stuff. And when I'm listening to your story, it comes from so much pain. It comes from so much trauma. It comes from no guidance, no love, no stability of how these programs start creating into somebody becoming a narcissist and becoming manipulative. Well, let's get to the root. Let's get to the beginning of when did this story begin and how did this form? And like, it's actually bringing so much empathy, because it's so easy to point fingers at people, especially men, and go like, oh, and just shit on them. And then what you're showing me right now is like, man, like having compassion, because they got to that because of what they experienced and what was done to them.
Yeah, no, I mean, everything you're saying resonates deeply. And I mean, for me, at the root of it was survival.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I just had this energetic pattern of hunting for a father figure.
Yeah.
Hunting for anyone to show me any form of attention.
Yeah.
You know, whether it was, you know, authentic, or whether it was like, fuck, here's Raj again. Right. You know, so it's just really interesting. I mean, you know, like, I mean, I emancipated myself when I was 15. I moved out of my house. I lived in my car in high school and just learned to survive. And in that situation, you know, and we kind of touched on it a little bit during that healing session, is if I'm weak, if I show weakness, then I'm preyed upon. Right? If I'm weak in this experience with this gentleman's son, you know, I'm preyed upon because I gave up my power. I didn't know it at the time, but I gave up my power to this individual who preyed on my weakness.
Yeah.
Who preyed, and like, you want to talk about emotional manipulation, you know, like,
yeah.
It's just,
that's who I was referring to originally, but I love that this conversation's gone there as well. And that's something for me, like I completely, I have a very similar kind of programs that I'm still working through of like the victim and the narcissism in terms of and using emotional manipulation. And just this past week, as I've gone deeper into this victim consciousness program, I'm really seeing that this part of my shadow would use it to get love, to get attention, because that's what I had to do when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Because that was the only time that I really got any like form of compassion or love or attention was by holding this thing up and saying, okay, I'm not saying that was the only time, but you get what I mean.
Oh,
right?
yeah, absolutely.
Right.
And I mean, you know, going back to like all the, like, we don't come into this world, you know, at least for me, when I chose to come into this experience, I did not have any divine teachings, or at least memories of my divinity or my power and things like that. So when I'm 4, 5, 6, 7, I'm throwing a temper tantrum on the floor, or I'm screaming, or I'm doing these things, you know, going back to like, you know, Danny, you're talking about mystical parenting. Like like in this temper tantrum, if our parents can like take a step back and it's like, oh man, this young little girl, they're just begging me to acknowledge what's going on. Like they just want a toy. Okay, cool. Well, right now, you know, how do we set that boundary? How do we allow that kid to move through those things? Maybe take them into another area, or allow them to get out their anger, get out their frustration, express what they need to express. We as that mystical parent can allow that to take shape, and also guide them and say, hey, how we communicate is with our voice, and we're going to teach you how to use your voice in a very you know, elevated way, right? So all I was really asking in those moments, begging for, was my mom to teach me.
Yeah.
You know, and unwinding it even further, you know, in her unconsciousness, she brought me into consciousness. You know, because you make a realization at some point in time, like, God, there's got to be a better way, right? There's got to be a way to, like, why do I get so triggered? Why do I get so angry? Why do I do all these things? What's going on? And having this absolutist attitude of, well, this is how I'm designed. This is my blueprint. This is my operating system, right? Like, that was my excuse to not go deeper. And in that, statement, I'm asking, or I'm essentially energetically stating to the people that are in relationship with me, whether it's my beloved or friends and confidants, that I will know this is the depth I'll go, right? I won't swim any deeper. I won't elevate you. You won't elevate me. We're just going to swim at the same depth, and we're not going to shift and elevate each other in these relationships. So it's very limiting. I mean, I'm essentially creating and designing this limiting belief around me. But with everything that you learn is, you can rewrite your operating system. You can rewrite the code. You can alchemize the code. You can upgrade the code. You can elevate it and become something what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to come to this experience and reclaim our birthright and remember.
Mm-hmm.
Remember, like, our true source of power, which is us.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think your story is so relatable in all different kinds of ways individually for so many people out there. Wounded people hurt people, right?
Yeah.
And, when I look at this incarnation and all the souls that are doing the work, it's like, we had to come here and stop the cycle because of how much darkness there is.
Yeah.
And even with the program of victim consciousness, it's such a tricky one because we were victims. And I see this on a collective level, whatever subject it has to do about, we perpetuate the victim program by staying in victim consciousness because, well, we deserve rights and we deserve love and we deserve all of these things, but actually nobody's taking responsibility, like you say,
Mm-hmm.
like re-alchemizing the code, changing the code. And it happens in everyone has to take responsibility over themselves, but it also takes a certain kind of courage to go, all right, I'm owning it. I see it. I honor it. And now let me go change it. And so seeing someone like you and Danny, and I think men in particular, it is monumental because so many men will not go there, will not step into that. And it is just crazy to see the men that do take the reins and go, no, let me go all the way in to get all the way out. And so many
That's
of
a
us,
great way to put it. Go all the way in to get all the way
yeah.
out. Yeah.
So many of us, the moment we recognize the victim program, because that's a hard one to see.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to
Mhm.
see that they run
Yeah,
a victim consciousness program.
Oh
Nobody.
man, no,
Yeah.
no.
Because, and then it also, there's a grieving in that because now you don't get to play like the woe
Nope.
is me card, which is an easy card to play and put out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just awesome and amazing to see that. And I hope everyone at home, like, really feel into like where, if you run this program and how you can really start alchemizing it, because the moment that you begin to quote unquote take your power back is the moment that you're taking your power back from your abusers, from people that created these programs of victim and shame and guilt and all of these things.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right, Ellie. I mean, like, spot on. And the crazy thing about it, like, you take victim consciousness at an individual level, and then you take victim consciousness at more of a holistic level, like, oh, the system, right? Oh, the government.
Mhm.
Oh, this. Oh, that. Oh, legislate this.
Yes.
Oh, it's like, okay, now we're externalizing, this victim consciousness when in reality, for me, in my opinion, is you can't stop what's happening. Like, there's no stopping what's going to happen. So my responsibility in that is see that experience, see all the, because that's all they want. They it's this energetic tractor beam of fear.
Yep.
And with fear is heavily embedded with victimization. So in that aspect, you go back to the topic of go along to get along. What am I going to sacred no and that boundary to begin to shift and take accountability, like divine fucking accountability for myself. And when I'm able to do that, how that ripples out into the consciousness, into the collective.
Yeah.
Because we you know, when we've talked about this, like, oh, I'm going to do this for my kids, or I'm going to do this for this, or do this for that. When I first started, you know, and I've shared this multiple times, when Aid begged me to elevate and feel, I was like, oh, I'm going to do this stuff for the relationship. Like, I want to keep the relationship together, you know, my like family and all. And then it just clicked to me, and it was just like, fuck, I'm doing this for myself. I'm reteaching myself.
Mm-hmm.
And whether or not, as I process this, my relationship stays intact, that's icing on the cake. But if it doesn't, that's going to suck tremendously. But you arrive at this place of an unbelievable amount of gratitude for finding yourself,
Yeah.
taking accountability, not going along to get along. Because when I just stay with the fear and the anger and all these things going out with companies and corporations and this, well, my car needs repair, that's victim, and all these things, you can shift that to, well, it's happening to me, or the energy, and this is very important, the energy that you come from, where you're originating this power, is very, very important and critical in terms of, am I coming from a place of manipulation? Am I coming from my wounds and my patterns and programs? Or am I coming from my divinity at the certain place in time where I'm at currently in my journey to say no? And then how do you say no?
Yeah.
Right? How do we communicate that? How do we disseminate that information? Because each and every person that takes an individual responsibility, takes accountability for themselves, ripples out.
Yeah.
And someone, somewhere, somehow, protons, electrons, neutrons, quantum fields, quantum physics, psychoenergetics, the things that we learn here in this program, will have an effect. We may not see it, we may not be able to touch, taste, feel, use our five senses, but we have to elevate to get beyond our five senses into a place of just knowing. And, you know, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah, and as we're bringing up, obviously, we've gone into emotional manipulation, we've gone into victim consciousness. Those two very related. If anyone's listening to this and they're not sure if they do run this program of victim consciousness, I just want to break it down just an extra layer and just think about, if I run this program to get love, I'm not going to be able to see necessarily that I run this program until I'm stopping looking for love outside of myself. So while that program's running of like, oh, I'm a victim, I need, you know, I need love, I need them to see me, until we really go in and start doing the work, and this is what we offer in all of our courses, is how to start to really know what it means to energetically connect to your own love. To truly understand what it means to find self-love from within. Till we do that, we can't see where we're playing the victim and where we're looking for love and we're using emotional manipulation. I'll use myself as an example. I've been doing this work for a year and a half, and I'm only just starting to really awaken to the programs of victim consciousness. So with that being said, like, it's not something that you maybe can pick out straight away, and be very careful if there's a part of you that's like, no, I would never run victim consciousness. No, that's not me. I don't want to look at that, right? Because that could be your shadow trying to hide itself.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is what we unpick is through the programs we offer, to unpack like what programs are we running. And the more that we build that energetic capacity to love ourselves from within, which is what we teach, then it allows us to start to see where we're looking for it outside of ourselves in the case of the victim. And it's a really like messed up way to like emotionally manipulate. And it's definitely come up in Ellie and mine's relationship when we've, in the past when we've gone into like love bombing. I know we've done podcasts on this before. That was something that I used to do a lot. And I remember, I think we both used to do it right at the beginning, right? It was like you just shower someone in what you want them to hear, as another form of emotional manipulation, so that they give you the love that or attention that you're seeking in that moment. Yeah.
Trap them.
Yeah.
No, I mean, it's fascinating to like really, and I mean, even, a year and a half in this, there was a lot of times like victim conscious around just MSU, right? Like as you're going through this stuff, you're like, oh my fucking God, oh, like this sucks, like fuck, and the crazy thing about it is we teach not to run from it, right? Like we're not saying like, oh, I'm in victim consciousness, bypass it and go positive vibes only. Let's go meditate. Let's do breath work. Like, no, sit in your fucking shit. Unpack all these little pieces and components and parts of who you are and go back to when it became okay. When did it become okay? At what age, with who, what, when, where, why, and the energetics around it to do that.
Yeah.
And then to reparent that aspect of you, that inner child, that version of you, and validate it, right? Like, how many times have we been like playing the victim, and from a coach perspective, for me, from athletics, like, oh, you're just being a victim. Like, oh, you're doing this, like, oh, you're doing that. My mom, like, oh, you're just being a victim. Just let it go. Get over it. Your story's tired. Right? So tons of us have not been modeled how to be powerful in our own skin, in our own, this meat suit that we occupy right now. Like a lot of people, like the meat suit they occupy is fucking so uncomfortable. They're not even comfortable in their own skin. Like how, like an unbelievable amount of compassion for those people, to really like really dive deep internally and go, where did I become uncomfortable? Where did just showing up and waking up every day became fucking hard?
Yeah. As we're talking about this, what keeps coming up for me is like, and I can talk about this because I'm Asian, but I don't know if you guys remember that whole thing of like Asian hate that was going on.
Yeah.
And when back then I like participated in all that. I was like, yeah, like, don't oppress Asian people and like, don't treat them all this stuff. And when I look back on it now, it was the first time where the Asian, population got a chance to speak, because we've been silenced for so long that it was a way for us to, for the first time, allow hatred to come out of us, allow the anger to come out of us. But I was just thinking of how it's so powerless to stay in all of that, right? Oppressed people stay oppressed because they oppress themselves, right? They won't allow themselves to go into the anger, to go into the hate, to go into what it feels like for you as an Asian person to be so silenced, right? Like my entire life, I felt like I didn't matter. Like it was always about like white and black people, but it was never about people. And then what formed out of that? Anger, a lot of anger. Like, why don't I matter? Why don't I count? Right. And then I swam in that over and over again. So when Asian hate popped off, I was like, this is my time.
Bang, I'm going to jump on that. Yeah.
And all I actually did was I just put a fire to the fire that was burning. Right. It wasn't this like waterfall that could like de-ignite the fire. It wasn't like, hey guys, we don't have to do this. We can just go within and heal everything that's in there. So when this stuff comes out, we can stand powerfully together and not fall into the pool of victim and all of these things. And so that can, speaks for all kinds of things that we, keep suffering from and being the victim of in our world. And I know that this is the time for the beginning of all of that. Is it going to take a while? Of course, because it requires people individually to go into themselves, which I see many are doing and then many don't want to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I'm super excited you brought this up, because how did that all start?
Yeah.
Right? Typically started from a media narrative that drove down into the Asian community that you're unsafe. Like if you just go outside, you're going to be attacked, something's going to happen,
Yeah.
all these different things. So it emanates from fear. And then it emanates from fear going into victim mentality
And separation.
and total
Because now all of a
separation.
sudden we're
Yeah.
hating on other
It's this,
people.
yeah.
Yeah.
And like that's a key piece, because if they can keep, or if we can keep I keep using they, it's actually we, if we keep ourselves separated and divided externally,
Yeah.
that is an internal expression of the separation and division of ourself.
Yes.
Right. So how amazing, like, and going back to this go along to get along, in that space when you're surrounded by all this anger, you know, do you just go along to get along? Or can you stand in your power and communicate that divinely to these people? Like, no, let it out. Let the anger out, but let's also dive deeper. So is it I'm just going to climb on the bandwagon irregardless of what my body, the knowing in my body is saying, or the teachings or the guidance or the energetic applications of the things we've learned, and be that radio transmitter of love and compassion. And when I say that, it's not to bypass anything. There's still accountability. Like compassion is not separate from accountability. I can have compassion for someone and who they are and where they're at, but I can also still divinely hold them accountable to that particular station and where they're at and how they're showing up.
Yeah.
And I think that's the things that we've really learned here, going back to Danny, is like all these patterns and programs and the teachings and the guidance and the awareness. But like when you can get to a place of, unconditional compassion, fuck, but still like the accountability piece. Like I see how you're in so much pain, but now let's take accountability and alchemize the pain so we can show up in a more divine version of who we are.
Mm-hmm.
Or do you just go along to get along?
That comes back to the piece we were talking about near the beginning, where in terms of not like the hate that's cast towards narcissism and the separation that's cast towards narcissism.
Yeah.
I remember when we made a video one time, and a bunch of people, I was talking about some kind of narcissistic tendencies that we were working through and I was healing. And there was so many comments that commented on saying, he's a narcissist, walk away, girl.
Yeah, break up with him now.
Oh,
Yeah,
one of my therapist teachers was like, narcissism can't be healed.
That's exactly one of the comments.
So sad.
Once a narcissist, always a narcissist.
Yep.
And
Rachel fucking blew me away when I brought that to her, because I was terrified. I was terrified to bring it up to her. Like,
you couldn't heal it.
Yeah, why? Like, and then it went to victim. Like, like I just spent all this stuff and all this time and all this energy for her to say, "No, you're fucked." Like,
right.
Have a good life.
Yeah.
No, she was like, "It's just energy, Roger.
Yeah.
It is just gnarly, grimy, murky energy that's going to take some time."
Yeah.
And if you're devoted to it, like passionately devoted to it, you can fucking alchemize it. She was the first person that blew me open to that possibility.
That you had a chance.
That I had a chance.
There's the only thing that we cannot heal is things that our soul is like choosing us to experience. For example, if you're born with one leg, if that's something that, and your soul wanted you to have the experience of knowing what it's like to be handicapped. I'm not saying that that's everybody that's born with one leg, not at all saying that, but there are things that our soul does want us to experience, and those things, like, they're for our benefit once we heal enough to get that gift.
Yeah.
But this is something that I've fallen into too, with like using recreational drugs and partying in my early 20s and late teens, and this belief that like I've fucked up my brain and I'm never going to heal. There's still
that
sometimes
resonates here. Resonates here, my brother.
it will come up. It will keep coming up.
Yeah.
It comes up in layers. And when it does, I fall into the victim. I fall into, oh, well, me, like, you know, blah, 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 you know, just feeling sorry for myself and all the stuff that the victim likes to feel.
Yeah.
And the truth is, you know, especially with what's being offered now through MSU with the ways of oneness, like those ways really can heal the energy that's causing whatever suffering that we're having.
Yeah.
Whatever it might be. And that might not be an overnight process. It might not be a year. It might be a lengthy period. And as you said, Roger, like with devotion and passion, like passionately devoted, like there's not much that we can't heal. And especially something like narcissism.
Yeah. And that's why, you know, I think I can speak for the three of us where we're so dedicated to this work because it's so revolutionary, right? It's simple, but it's hard. And it takes, of course, willingness and devotion. But the core of the work that we teach and we guide and what we've integrated within ourselves is, what programs are you running? Where do these programs come from? In what ways of oneness are you not living in this moment as you are triggered? How old do you feel? And let's connect back to your innate power and alchemize and heal this stuff. It is so simple, but it takes the first way of oneness, which is the way of responsibility, to even begin the journey.
Yeah. Like, and it's like responsibility, like, oh, hey, I'm responsible. I show up to work on time. Oh, I take my dogs out, or I work out on a regular basis. Oh, I eat. Like, it's not that.
Yeah.
It has, like, I want to be very fucking clear. It is not that. Yeah. It is responsibility for my shit and how I show up each and every day and how I interact with the other humans in this experience. First and foremost, how I interact with myself. You know, how do I show up if, you know, my kid, you know, does something and I'm like, what the, like, there is a reason why you do that. There is a pattern, there's a program, there's a wound, there's a conflict that taught you how to do that. Now, ask yourself, do you want to have a better relationship with yourself so you can have a much more divine relationship with your kids?
Yeah.
Do you want to have a much more divine relationship with yourself? To fucking have a divine relationship with your partner. Like, the greatest gift in this whole experience for me has been able to gift myself emotional safety. And through that gift to myself, bring that to my loved ones. Like, I never knew how to do that.
Yeah.
I never had the fucking capacity or the depth to do it. Like, that's like, and that all started with the first way of oneness, was the way of responsibility.
Yeah.
You know? And I mean, the crazy part about this stuff is I see society, and myself included, how much money we go and spend on life coaches or the gym or this or self-help books or all these other things, medicine, you know, all these things. And we're okay spending that money. It's an inordinate amount of money, billion-dollar industries that are around that. Why won't you spend that on learning who you are and remembering who you are?
Yeah.
Like, why do I want to spend my money on all these external things looking to improve my aesthetic physical appearance in the world? Because when I fucking blow up myself in terms of showing up with integrity, responsibility, connection, unconditional love, compassion, humility, like, now I don't give a shit about what I look like. I give a shit about what I feel like.
Yeah.
And through that feeling, then my expression of physicality becomes much more genuine and much more authentic.
Beautiful. Yeah, I love that.
Just making some notes for some other podcasts and videos. Yeah, so many ideas that you're sparking in my mind.
Yeah, but it's so true. We spend so much on the external.
I mean, like, unpack like medicine. Like, I got started with medicine, plant medicine. And I unpacked, like, when we were looking at Rachel's course, I'm like, oh boy, whew, right? Well, I energetically was like, we're going to do this. We'll figure out a way. And we figured out a way. But then I really started to go, well, how much have I spent on plant medicine? How much have I spent on how much have I spent on all these other things? And yes, I've elevated, I got some awarenesses here and there, but hundreds of thousands of dollars. And in a year and a half, that stuff pales in comparison to where I'm at today with how I show up today with MSU, the courses, the teachings, the guidance, and, you know, Rachel's expression of how she shows up for the world.
Yeah.
And it won't be long before this beacon of what MSU is, this shoreline of what MSU is going to be a household name.
Yeah. Yeah. What we're building and creating right now is, I mean, there's no words to really describe what this work can do when it reaches more and more people.
Yeah. Yeah. And we see it a lot in the community, and it's cool as three coaches sat here that, you know, meet up multiple times in the week to support each other, to help each other through challenging times. There's a part of me that obviously these are private calls, but there's a part of me like, I just wish other people could see and feel, not just see, feel what it is that we can offer each other. And it's not coming from this like, oh, I've got a men's group and I've got my tribe where as long as I go to that, I'm okay. And I just, you know, offload all of my problems and then I feel better. It's the opposite. We're sharing space with each other. And when it's time, we offer support to one another to guide ourselves or to guide each other back to their own internal power, and to really know what it means to heal in oneness. And that is what, you know, all of this work is about healing in oneness with your inner child, with your shadow, with yourself, with your partner, with the collective, with a group of people, with a coach, whomever it may be. And this community space that we get to share is like
out
of this world.
Because we really chat. We don't go, oh my God, you're amazing.
We don't go along to get along. We call each other out on our shit, and we do it with love.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of gentle poking of the bear. Of like, there's a program, and sometimes they're not so gentle pokes. Sometimes they're
it's like a fire poker that's been in the fire.
Stings a little bit.
Those are my favorite. Those are my favorite.
And I really see in the future, the more that we have traffic coming in, the more and more people that come through, we'll have these community spaces for all of the students and clients and coaches, and everyone alike, to share this journey. And on that note, we do have a Discord. We do have a community Discord channel for people that of like minds that want to connect with people that are on a similar path, that are stepping into radical self-empowerment. And there'll be, if you're watching on YouTube or any of that, like Spotify, I will throw a link in the bottom in the show notes if you want to come join and say hi, and feel free to jump on and say what's up to myself, Roger, and Ellie.
Love it. Absolutely love it. I mean, we're growing something here. We don't go along to get along. We do it, and the energy we come from in that is our divine growth. Right. And we do it with compassion. We do it with love. And sometimes it's fucking tough love. Sometimes you gotta I've been punched in the face I don't know how many times by, you know, Baker, Christy, Adrian, yourselves. It's like, you're running a fucking story, Roger. Like, get out of your story, get out of your victim. Like, let's get to the nitty gritty. It's like, fuck. Okay, cool. Got it. You know, and I mean, Rachel, like sometimes like, hey, it's compassion. And then when you start sifting through that, it's the Mack truck.
Yeah.
You know, and then sometimes it's just this beautiful, pillowy, soft, loving, nurturing, like fulfilling. I mean, all of them are fulfilling incredibly, but it's just feeling into who we're working with intuitively and guiding that experience accordingly.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, I mean, I think that for me, you know, to people listening and watching, stop going along to get along. Like, take your fucking power back. Quit living in victim consciousness. Unwind the patterns and programs that you have, or at least like be curious. Like, even just like a free consultation, just get curious. Right? Like we've all been little kids, like curious about this, curious about that. Like, I want to go try this. Or if I didn't get curious about skiing, would have I ever skied? If I didn't get curious about lifting weights, would I ever dove into lifting weights? You know what? That's the first step. Like, get curious.
Yep.
And step up.
Yeah. So for all of you at home, you know, if you feel that little poke that's like calling you to set up a consultation to learn about our one-on-one coaching programs, our group classes, the digital course to the introduction of the universal ways of oneness, anything, you can visit mastersofselfuniversity.com to set up a consult and work with any of us. We are here to teach and guide you the work. And Roger, thank you so much for this beautiful topic today.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah.
Like, share, subscribe, comment, and until next time, we'll see you guys later.
Bye.
Bye.
Adios. Take care, everybody.